So I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the budget workshop for Community Planning and Economic Development Committee for March 15th, 2023. I'd like to welcome the other committee members that have come and the other town councilors and all the other town staff that has come to the meeting today. Just quickly, I wanted to introduce myself because I don't know a lot of you on the call. I'm Tiffany McGinnis. I'm the newest town councilor and the new chair of this committee. I haven't had a chance to meet all of you yet, but I look forward to meeting you in person and working with you all going forward. So, Mr. Manager, I will turn it over to you
Thank you,
to get us started.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to your first Community Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting. Good morning, councilors as well. I'll do a quick introduction to everyone for our newest town councilor. So we have our Director of Community Development, who will be doing most of the presentation this morning. That's Dwayne Martin. We have a Director of Financial Services, Peter Privatera, joining us. We have our Town Engineer, Greg Summer. And then we have Lisa Newton, our Financial Operations Manager, and Patty Lewis, our Budget and Grants Manager. Before I turn things over to Dwayne, just wanted to take a moment to thank the council for their support over the last year, particularly as it relates to the Community Development Department. As we have discussed over the last year, we've seen a significant amount of economic development occurring throughout town. And this development has had a significant impact on community development in every division within community development. So that's engineering, that's building inspection, and planning and zoning. And the council has supported this growth and development with the approval of additional staff to meet this demand this past fiscal year. So though we're not requesting any additional positions for the upcoming year, these new positions from this past year are reflected in the FY24 budget and did have a direct impact on our projected wages for the upcoming year. So thank you again to the council. With that being said, through you, Madam Chair, I will turn things over to our Director of Community Development, Dwayne Martin, who will give an overview of the community development budget, including all three divisions that I just mentioned. So Mr. Martin, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dwayne Martin, Director of Community Development. It's my pleasure, my honor to present to you the department budget, my favorite department. Wanted to start off by going over a general overview of the department and some of the highlights and our objectives coming up, and then I'll dive into the other sections. And I will pause, but feel free to stop me if you have any questions along the way. So in the budget booklet, the Department of Community Development budget starts on page 10-1. That's where I'm going to begin. Pointing out, as Rick mentioned, community development is made up of 4 different divisions. Those are the management, engineering, building inspection, and planning and zoning divisions. I'll go through each of those as I continue on. But first, I just wanted to point out some of the highlights and accomplishments from fiscal year 23. I think it's important to showcase these because the department staff did spend a lot of time and put a lot of effort into these great projects. Not going to read all of them, but I just want to highlight a few. So the first one is the building inspection division. Just wanted to point out that obviously they're a very busy division. You'll hear that through my presentation in a few spots. But we do take on some larger projects, which is impactful to the staff. So just pointing out a couple there. The one park redevelopment is a very big project that they are taking on and doing the best they can with inspections. And then 540 New Park Avenue. So those are some great projects that were added into the mix in the past fiscal year. And the one park development on Park and Prospect continues. Planning division, I highlighted the transit-oriented development district that was created in the Elmwood section of town along the CT Fast Track corridor. That was a great addition and change to our zoning. So I wanted to highlight that. As you're probably well aware, we've launched online with our licenses and permits through our CityView platform for the entire department, engineering, building inspection, and planning and zoning. Not met without some bumps in the road, but we are doing our best to address those and get forward. We have had some compliments and some people are happy with that. So we'll keep making improvements as we go along. And then the engineering division, 2 projects real quick. North Main Street Road Diet was a success. The staff worked hand in hand with a consultant to get that to fruition, and it remains and is still successful, as many of you are well aware. And then our Trapper Trail, we keep expanding. So the engineering division was successful in completing the section of the Trapper Trail from Fern Street to Farmington Avenue. There's another section coming up this year as well. Pointing out a few of the fiscal year 24 goals and objectives that we plan on accomplishing soon. The West Hartford Infrastructure Master Plan, which is underway. We will get a plan from our consultant later on this year, and we'll be working on implementing some of the aspects of that plan almost immediately on LaSalle Road and then Farmington Avenue. Looking forward to that. Our Vision Zero initiative is in progress. We have already had a first meeting. Engineering staff and myself will be heavily involved in that initiative going forward. And then, as I mentioned, the next section, the Trout Brook Trail, which is planned to start construction very soon this spring, which will be from Duffield Drive down to Fern Street. We will get it to Asylum Avenue as well. Okay, advancing on in the budget booklet, going to page 10-3. As Rick mentioned, we did add a couple staff in the fiscal year 23 budget year to handle the high level of activity. So those 2 staff were full-time employees, one in the building inspection division, which is a senior building inspector, and then also in our planning and zoning division, which is a senior planner. Senior building inspector is in place. The senior planner is yet to be filled, but we are working on getting that posting out soon with hopes of having that person start in April of this year. And as Rick said, we do not have any proposed additional staff in the fiscal year 24 budget. Okay, moving on to page 10-4, which is the management division.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Through you, Madam Chair. Just a question. I know the license and permit has gone up a lot in terms of revenue. Is that because of extra staff, or is there a change in fees?
The license and permit revenue line in the budget?
Right.
Would that be the building permit line?
Yeah, the right on 10-3.
10-3 is primarily a reflection of the building permit revenue that we receive. And yes, it has gone up quite a bit because of all the activity in town. It's on an upward trend.
Okay. Great, thank you.
I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the building inspection division in case you have other questions. Okay, so again, on 10-4, this is the summary for the management division. I just wanted to highlight a couple items that are in there that are budget drivers to some extent on this sheet anyway. The educational premium pay, you'll see that was introduced. The reason for that, there was a contractual obligation for one of the staff people. So management division is myself and a full-time office operations specialist. So previous to this fiscal year, we had a different staff person in that role. For the office operations specialist, it was actually a staff assistant. So it was an upgrade, but the benefit of the office operations specialist is they don't just work for the management division, they help out with all divisions in community development, but they're situated, if you will, in the management division section of the budget. And the contractual obligation for that staff person was for a higher level education. They get this benefit. So that's why that was introduced. That's in the union contract. That's the education premium pay. And then the second thing I just wanted to point out was we had an increase in the line item for information technology in the management division budget. So that line item is for 2 software packages, the annual maintenance for the CityView program, which I mentioned, which is now used by engineering, building, and planning and zoning. I thought it best to shift it last fiscal year into the management division, since it doesn't just take benefit from or just one of the divisions. But you'll see there was an increase in that. It's for CityView and also Bluebeam, which go hand in hand with CityView for staff to use for review of permit applications. There was an increase in the maintenance fees for those, and that's reflected in that line item. Okay, advancing to the engineering division. So this is 10-6 in the budget book. Wanted to point out 3 budget drivers on the engineering division's budget page. First one is contractual services. Just there isn't a change in the request. There's still 175,000, but I just wanted to point out that that is an important component of our budget, and it is a big number outside of the pay. The reason for that is it's an obligation of the state permit that the town needs to keep with the State Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. Essentially, we've referred to it as our MS4 program, but it is related to keeping our stormwater clean to benefit the town, the state, Long Island Sound. So just wanted to point that out because it is a kind of a big number, but that's the reason that it is in there. Slight increase, but I'll mention uniforms and laundry for the engineering division. We had a lot of $1,000 in that line item for annual or recurring expenditure for safety shoes. We do have staff that goes out on construction sites. In addition to that safety shoe component of that line item, the staff is in need of having uniforms which identify them to the public. We do have lanyards, we do have town vehicles, but engineering staff gets out of those town vehicles and enter onto private property on a daily basis, and in many cases have to go inside buildings and houses similar to the building division. So we would like to have uniforms, which we're looking at jackets, to identify staff to the public who may be looking for more than just a name badge or business card. So there was an increase requested of 1,500 in that line item for that. And then field operations. This is mostly related to the work that we perform as an engineering division in the field. A lot of it's related to surveying. They need to purchase materials each year to do surveying efforts in preparation for our construction season. From time to time, we have one-time purchases that are needed with equipment either getting old or needing to be updated. In this case, it's an update to the service equipment, which would provide GPS components. The benefit of this is it allows a survey staff person to do some of the survey work that we do each year by themselves. Our survey crew is 2 full-time staff that work hand in hand, but sometimes they take time off at different times for various reasons. This would allow more flexibility and more productivity of our surveying staff. So that increase of 22,000 is for GPS survey equipment. I'll pause there before advancing on to building inspection if there are any questions. Okay, seeing none. Going to the building inspection division, this is 10-9 in the budget booklet. As Councilor Winograd indicated.
Actually, I'm sorry, I do have a question. I just couldn't get myself unmuted quickly enough. Through you, Madam Chair. Just looking at that contractual services line item, are there certain times of the year that we do that testing? And is that why it's the first 6 months we're only 24.6, but we're projecting to spend the 175?
Yes, it's a multifaceted program, but testing of our storm drainage system outfalls is a big component. Outfall is where the storm drainage or pipe discharge into an open water body or water course. So we have a consultant that will go and they'll do get a grab sample, if you will, of that water and then send it to a testing agency. There are particular times of year that they have to do the testing. Some of those are during dry weather, so usually the summertime, and some of them are during wet weather, which is typically the spring or the fall. So they are in the process of doing some of that testing now. There are also protocols where you need to have a certain amount of rain to flush the system out and then get the test adequately contained. But short answer is yes, it's because they haven't gotten to that point in the fiscal year.
Thank you.
I do have one question on the temporary payroll. There's a significant decrease in that. It says that during construction season, that includes a part-time engineering technician and an engineering intern. Is that changing or?
Yes. Yeah, we're changing direction on that. So this was something that I introduced in the last fiscal year budget, was an increase in the temporary payroll to assist the engineering division during their construction season. The challenges that we have spikes of activity, but it's not a need to have a full-time staff person throughout the year. And sometimes there's overnight work or weekend work. Engineering interns have helped the engineering division out historically in the past, and it's been very rewarding to those college students as well. We wanted to retain that in the fiscal year budget going forward. We tried to hire a part-time engineering technician in the past, and we've struggled to find a suitable candidate. There just are not a lot of people that fit within that category, that skill set that we're looking for, and the flexibility that we need. We do have a potential candidate this year, but we've decreased that line item for that reason. That's mostly now geared towards the intern. We don't have issues getting interns. But the other part-time engineering technician is a challenge. What we may do to pivot instead is use the capital improvement program budget as needed for construction projects to hire an on-call construction inspector.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair, I have a question. A couple of questions actually for Mr. Martin. On training. So it says here that in fiscal year 2023, this funded AutoCAD training is not needed in 2024. So my question is there no training required for staff? Is this common? And then I have another question for you.
Sure. Training is it for the engineering staff, believe it or not, is not required. I think it should be, especially for the licensed professional engineers and the licensed land surveyor that are on staff, but the state of Connecticut does not require recurring training for those staff. We do occasionally have courses that staff will attend, not just the engineers and the surveyor, but all the staff have that opportunity. So we do want to keep some funding in the budget line item for training, but it's not required. The AutoCAD training was the driver in last year's budget, which was a one-time spike or addition, if you will. We will have that, but it probably will be a few more years before that comes around again.
Okay, thank you. And then the question on the uniforms and laundry, is this for how many staff? I don't want to assume it's for all 9, or is it?
If it's permissible, I will ask Greg Summer, the town engineer, to answer that. I believe it's for field staff, which would be primarily focused on our engineers, but through you, if it's permissible, I would like Greg to answer that question.
Good morning, Greg Summer, town engineer. Really, the intent would be that it would be predominantly for the field staff, so it would be our surveyors and our construction inspectors that are routinely out in the field. But our engineering staff does also go out from time to time, so they may benefit from that as well. Field staff might get 1 or 2 articles, and maybe the engineering staff would get one one issued piece of clothing, something like that. That would be the intent.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. So I believe that takes us to the building inspection division, which is page 10-9. The only budget driver that I was going to discuss for them is the building permit revenue, which you can see is projected to go up by 400,000. This is always a challenge for me. I have to admit, the building permit revenue is a little bit of a wild card, depending on approvals and the timing of when the permit applications will be received. As you know, we've had a lot of development applications that were approved, some of them of size, which will improve that line item. I was actually proposing a bigger number, but was cautioned, and we reduced it to 2.3 million. So that number is a little conservative in my mind, but it is difficult to say exactly. For example, the Arapahoe redevelopment, which is a development of size, was approved, but it's difficult to say exactly when the building permit applications will come in. They were suggesting this summer, so it's right on that fiscal line, but I'm comfortable with that number. Perhaps it'll be higher than that. We'll see. All of the other budget line items for the building inspection division are approximately the same, except for payroll and Social Security. The emergency supplies, I guess that went down if you want, that's a percentage-wise a big change, but that's all I was going to touch on for building inspection division. Any questions there? Okay. Going to.
Deb has a, I'm sorry, Deb
I'm
has a
sorry.
question.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you so much. You know, I'm sure you're aware, we do occasionally hear from people who are who are wishing that the process would go by more quickly as far as scheduling inspections. And I'm wondering if what you think that you need from the council and from the taxpayers in town in order to speed up that process. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, I am well aware. We hear this quite a bit. I answered an email, as a matter of fact, on this very subject yesterday. Manager Ledwith and I meet and discuss the building inspection division and what we can do for improvements. We have put an action plan, if you will, if you want to call it that, in order. And as Rick mentioned earlier, we have received approval to add staff, and that is a piece of that action plan. We just haven't received the benefit of that yet. We've been challenged with a few things, unfortunately, that happened at the same time, which has led to the complaints and the challenges that we face. Specifically, as I mentioned, the increased workload, which is great. We also had a full-time building inspector leave, part-time building inspector leave. That was November and December. We launched online in December. So a lot of that happened at the same time, and there was some challenges with the new online platform. We also had 2 full-time staff take a few months, let's say, of medical leave around that time as well. So we're back to the original staff. We have brought on a part-time staff assistant to help with the front-end permit verification. We have hired a part-time building inspector to fill the loss in that role. That person will not start until March 27th. And we are out, I think, no, it's today. Today is the closing for the full-time building inspector, which would be in addition to the full-time staff. So we anticipate filling that role in April. Based on the metrics we've been tracking, we hope to see noted improvements within the couple months with new staff arriving and improvements to our CityView online platform. We'll continue to monitor. I do put metrics in my monthly department report for the building inspection division. We're hoping to see an improvement trend. But if we continue on this path where the work increases, that trend continues, we may need to explore additional staff. Now, I don't know that that's going to be on the front end or the staff assistants. I think it would be more on the building inspection staff, but that's yet to be seen. When you bring new staff on, there's sometimes new energy, new procedures that can come into play, and improvements can be met that way as well.
Thank you so much. And I just want to make sure that you know that I'm asking this question just because I want to hear if there's more that we should be providing your department in order to help things along. So I appreciate.
Thank you. Any other questions before I move on? I will point out, since that question was asked, there is obviously the performance measures in the budget pertaining to all the divisions, including building inspection, and you can see. So for building, it's on 10-11. Pretty much all of those has increased in work volume or time to address that work. That's just the trend that we're on. We have compared our work volume and inspections per inspector as a specific example to other similar communities. And that was used as justification to bring on new staff. We will continue to track that as a metric. Okay, on to planning and zoning, the planning and zoning division. So that's 10-12 in the budget book. Not a lot to go over for this division either. Most of it stayed the same outside of payroll. Some of the items went down. I will point out, as mentioned earlier, that we plan on bringing on a senior planner in which was put into the fiscal year 23 budget. The senior planner position is a high-level position within that division and will assist the town planner with his duties, covering meetings and other higher level decision making. So it should help with the town planner's plate of work, if you will. Also wanted to point out for the planning and zoning division, the performance measures, those also are at a high level. A lot of what they do is support boards and commissions beyond responding to applicants and the public with regards to our regulations. But it's just important to check the performance measures, and you'll see the activity level has either stayed the same or has gone up. That division has shrunk in number over the years. We had, I believe it was 6 staff, including part-time. So we're looking to grow in that division to be able to handle that workload. Any questions on the planning and zoning division? Okay, seeing none, I believe I need to pivot to our capital improvement program. So, and again, I just want to recognize Greg Summer, the town engineer, is here. I may rely on him for hard-hitting questions that I may not have the answers to, but I will do the best I can. Okay, so our capital improvement program for year 1 starts on 17-21. And what I want to do for this is just quickly go through and explain what those individual programs are. So I'm going to dive a little deep in the first year, and then for the second year, I will only highlight the ones that change. But again, I can go into more detail or answer any of your questions. Feel free to stop me if you have any. So again, starting on 17-21, there's a summary sheet. So we're looking at the transportation and circulation section. These capital improvement programs are used, a lot of them are recurring, and they are used very frequently to fund a lot of the construction activities that the engineering division accomplishes each year. A lot of these, if not all of them, are related to our public infrastructure, our roadways, curbing, sidewalks, drainage, street lighting, traffic signals, etc. So the first one on the list there is pedestrian and bicycle management. Pedestrian and bicycle, oh, I see a hand up. Take that question.
Sorry, what is the page number? I don't have a section 17.
It's in the other book.
I'm in the other book.
It's in the adopted book, the large book,
The budget book. yeah.
general fund book.
Okay.
It's in the back at capital budget.
Oh, there it is.
So it's page 17-21.
Got it.
You got it?
Thank
Okay.
you. I moved to the other book. So.
No problem.
That way.
So that 17-21 is a summary sheet. So we're looking at the top section, transportation and circulation. So again, the first one is pedestrian and bicycle management. This is a recurring capital improvement program, and it focuses attention on pedestrian and bicyclist needs. A lot of what is funded out of this program is our expansive public sidewalk network, or sidewalks that are along public streets in the public street right of way. We have approximately 300 miles of sidewalks, believe it or not, in West Hartford, and they require constant upkeep and maintenance. Engineering division uses several practices with contractors and also with assistance by Public Works to maintain our public sidewalk system. A lot of the funding in this program goes to the replacement of public sidewalks. We do also do improvements for ADA compliance in our sidewalk network, which is mostly for sidewalk ramps. We also will add sections of sidewalk based on our sidewalk policy. Believe it or not, 300 miles sometimes isn't enough. We have gaps, and we look to improve that to benefit the public. We also have bicycle management projects. Our complete streets policy requires us to look at all users of our roadways, including bicyclists. And we have done a lot of projects in town, and we will continue to do so. And some of the funding comes from this capital improvement program for that.
Madam Chair, I do have a quick question on this. Mr. Martin, quick question for you. on my daily walks. I don't know why I'm getting the feedback.
I can mute.
Okay. I think it was Whiting Lane I was walking on a couple days ago, and I noticed the paint along the sidewalk that needs to be repaired. How soon after that paint is applied to identify the sidewalk is that scheduled to be repaired? I'm curious.
It varies, and it could be dependent upon the location or what the paint represents. An example, and this could be for Whiting, and Greg, if you want to add on to this, that's fine, of course. On occasion, we do have people that trip on our sidewalks. Unfortunately, we get notified, or somebody sees an issue on our sidewalk before somebody trips and will notify us. They'll put in a complaint or a work order. Our staff will respond to those, usually within that day, if not the next day, and they will paint the sidewalk in an orange paint to make it stand out. Sometimes they'll put a cone there just to warn the public that there is a deficiency in the sidewalk so that people don't trip and get hurt. We have essentially three means that we address these with. So it could be a contractor doing a replacement, a contractor saw cutting the sidewalk, or Public Works could go in and replace the sidewalk. Challenge is you can't pour concrete in cold weather. So that's where the answer to the question depends. There could be other reasons why the paint is on the sidewalk. I'm not sure about that particular location, but the answer to your question is it varies.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very important to unmute. Let me start over. Stormwater management is the second capital improvement program. Just want to point out that there is another capital improvement program down the list called flood mitigation infrastructure improvements. These are two separate capital improvement programs. Traditionally, we've had stormwater management as a recurring CIP. We now have flood mitigation in there as well. So stormwater management is to address issues with our aging storm drainage system. We could have holes in it, which develop sinkholes in the road or off the road. We could have flooding to a minor extent. We could have catch basins that need replacement. Those traditionally have been funded through our stormwater management CIP. More recently, we've had severe, significant flood events involving vast areas of the town. We've created a new CIP, that's the flood mitigation infrastructure improvements, because we were not able to fund everything out of that one CIP, and the direction's a little bit different as far as the size and scope. So that's why there are two separate ones. Both of those now are recurring. Next category is street reconstruction. Street reconstruction is a higher level activity for a roadway, which involves curbing replacement, oftentimes sidewalks, driveway aprons, some drainage work. Sometimes we will incorporate widening of a road for safety improvements. Example of that would be to incorporate left turn lanes. We would remove the pavement, replace the base of the road as needed, and then pave the road. These projects typically take months to complete. Oftentimes they involve our collector and arterial streets or bigger roadways. We do have them in our neighborhood streets as well. But street reconstruction is more of an extensive capital improvement category compared to the next one, which is street resurfacing. We do a lot of street resurfacing in town. This is simply to repave the roads, or oftentimes not touching the curbs, but sometimes we have to. If they're asphalt, we would replace them as part of the street resurfacing category. Street resurfacing is usually fairly quick compared to complete reconstruction. Oftentimes it's simply just removing the top surface of the roadway pavement and then putting it back down with new fresh pavement. We do approximately 7 miles of street resurfacing a year. So the next category is.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have a question.
Oh, yep.
So on the street resurfacing, have there been any decisions made on what streets are going to be done with this, or is it too early to make that assessment right now?
Yes, the short answer is yes. I will put street reconstructions in the CIP each year for the first year. I typically do not for the street resurfacing because at the time that I'm preparing the budget document, I'm not sure what those will be. We do 3 rounds of street resurfacing each year. The first round is in May. So when we're preparing the budget document, we don't quite have this formulated. But we do now have the first round of streets listed. We have Greg go through those if you want. I believe they're posted on our webpage or will be soon. And we update the public using the webpage and also the department report when we're confident that those streets are going to get repaved. Specifically, we don't list all of the street resurfacing streets all at once. That has led to problems. When you tell somebody the street's going to get paved and then it drops off the list for some reason, it makes them pretty upset. So we release them one round at a time. So the answer is no. I don't believe I listed them in this CIP because at the time I didn't know. We now know, and we put that information on our webpage. And like I said, if you want an example or two, I can have Greg give you the first round list.
I think Ben has a question.
And suddenly I've got street construction going on my street. There's like drilling going on. I have trouble hearing. I thought you did list some on 1724, but is that did I miss that or? I'm sorry. I thought you did list a few in that detail, but I'm not sure if that's an accurate list.
I was asking about the street resurfacing, not the street
Oh,
reconstruction.
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. I'm having trouble hearing on this. Apologies.
Yeah, there's static or something. Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah. And background as well. So I'll mute.
Okay, again, carrying on with the summary, the next capital program is the Park Road rehabilitation. This was in our CIP already, but I just wanted to mention it. It's a planned rehabilitation of Park Road. What that means is it'll be a rejuvenation, if you will. So beyond repaving the road, we're gonna look at crosswalks. We are to see if we can make pedestrian improvements. We are also going to look at sidewalk surfaces and see if we can make improvements or replacements. Also looking at sidewalk ramps. Originally, the plan was to use ARPA funds for this, and then we received a state bond. So it's shown as in grants in there. So one-time project, not recurring. The next CIP is traffic system management. This is a complex recurring CIP. It involves our traffic infrastructure. So obviously it could be traffic signals, signage, hail markings, guide rail, etc. There's a lot that goes into this category. Street lighting is another one specifically mentioned. This is recurring. The funding for this is mixed. As you can see on the summary there, we have bond funding, CRE, which we use the CRE for pavement markings because they typically don't last more than 5 years, and then grants. So 3 different funding sources for traffic system management. Next category, which I've touched upon, the flood mitigation, is a new recurring program. This is the first year that it's included in the budget booklet. For year 1, it's shown as 2 million. Year 2 and beyond, it is proposed at 5 million. Unfortunately, flood mitigation projects are very, very expensive. Next 2 projects are one-time projects. They're non-recurring. Cedric Road pavement rehabilitation is a project that we are hopeful to do this summer. This was a grant that we received. So you'll see there's $1 million listed as grants. Due to the scope of the project, there is a $250,000 bonding component added to that to cover some additional scope items. This project is from Wardwell Road to South Main Street. And it will, beyond repaving the road, involve improvements to the crosswalks. We have schools in the vicinity of that section of roadway. Introducing bike lanes. And also doing improvements to the traffic signal at South Main Park and Sedgwick to improve pedestrian safety and ADA compliance. So again, that's a one-time project. And then the last project listed there, the LaSalle Road reconstruction project. This is a component of our West Hartford Center infrastructure master plans. You'll see this will become a huge improvement to LaSalle Road as far as benefiting pedestrians primarily, but also slowing traffic, making it safer for all users. This is in preliminary design to be in construction next year. So it's a one-time project. 2.2 million is listed as grants. We're planning on using ARPA funds. The 2.2 million was a preliminary estimate, we'll call it. We should be receiving a detailed cost estimate from our consultant who's doing the master plan soon. And we will review that and adjust as needed. So more to come on that. That's a one-time project. Hoping to start construction on LaSalle Road in the spring of next year. So approximately a year from now. And hope to get that done in 1 year, but we'll see. Any questions on any of that before I advance to year 2?
Deb?
Yes.
Yes, I was sitting on a committee meeting a few weeks ago, and there was a discussion of bike lanes on New Park. And I'm just wondering where that would sit, if it's appropriate or not to give an update on that. Like, is that something that the town council would decide? Would that be part of your division? And where would we find that in here? Thank you.
I'll start off, but I may ask Greg to assist with the answer to that question. So New Park Avenue was introduced in the CIP in previous years, and it is predominantly funded through grants. So very little of the project cost would be associated with our bond funding, but we do put grant projects in the CIP. That project is under design. I believe we have made it through the preliminary design phase. In the process of doing that and conducting outreach, the topic of bike lanes came up, and we had to take a step back, working with the Pedestrian Bicycle Commission to evaluate our options there. Northerly half of the project, New Park Ave, is planned for reconstruction from approximately the West Hartford Place driveway all the way down to Britain Ave. And we wanted to incorporate bicycle facilities because there's a lot of bicycle riders along the corridor. We had the fast drive stations and also the beginning or end, depending on your perspective, of our truck or trail. So during the design phase, we were proposing on the northerly section what we call a side path. So essentially a trail off the road for bicyclists to use and also pedestrians. However, when you get to Talcott Road and to the south on New Park Ave, we were not able to fit a side path. So we were proposing on-street bike lanes. That was met with some concern, some complaints, and a request to pivot and do a different design. And we explored doing what's referred to as a cycle track on New Park Ave from Talcott Road down to New Britain Ave. Cycle track would allow bicycle riders to ride in a separated area from motor vehicle traffic and from pedestrians. And it would be on a paved surface, and it would be adjacent to the travel lanes, but we would have a physical separation between the bicyclists and the motor vehicles, so it would be safe. That created some additional challenges, and the engineering division has met with a working group under the Pedestrian and Bicycle Commission to work on some of those particulars. And I'm going to ask Greg Summer through you, if it's okay, just to make sure that I did not misspeak on any of what I just said, or if you have anything to add on, Greg. Thank you.
I think you covered it, Dwayne. It's the update.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to touch upon a few capital improvement projects in program year 2. As I indicated before, a lot of these CIPs in transportation and circulation are recurring, so I won't go through those again. So the first one that I want to mention is street resurfacing.
Wayne, you want to mention the page?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, year 2 is 17-66. Again, the first one that I'll mention is street resurfacing. That particular page is 17-70. Already explained street resurfacing. I just wanted to mention that we've requested an increase in this for actually for year 1 and year 2. I should have specified earlier. So for street resurfacing, we've asked for an increase of $300,000 for this capital improvement program due to cost increases related to asphalt. Like a lot of our construction industry commodities, we've had increases in sharp, unplanned increases in costs, and it's impacting our ability to perform work. So there was a request made for year 1 and year 2 street resurfacing of $300,000 to be able to continue the same line of work. I just wanted to point that out. Also in year 2 on page 17-73, we introduced a new project to our capital improvement program. So one-time project, Farmington Avenue reconstruction. This is another project that will be born out of our West Hartford Center infrastructure master plan. As I mentioned, the South Road will go first. Farmington Avenue will follow. A lot of the same elements are incorporated in the preliminary design for Farmington Ave as we have for LaSalle Road. One big difference between what's proposed on LaSalle and what's proposed on Farmington Ave is Farmington Ave, we are exploring a cycle track there as well, as I mentioned for New Park. This one would be a little bit different than New Park in that it would be separated. So the bicyclists would ride next to each other. They would have a one-way pathway, which is protected in each direction, but separated one on either side of Farmington Avenue. So this project was introduced into the CIP. It will be funded with hopes of being in construction on Farmington Ave from Walden to South Main Street, or South Main Street, big intersection there, in construction season 2025. The funding allocation or the estimate that is there, it's very preliminary, similar to the South Road. We expect to get an updated cost estimate from our consultant soon. We'll adjust that accordingly. So it's a one-time project. And the last capital improvement program that I want to mention in year 2 is on page 17-74. This is a new project, which was or is a recurring request. It's referred to as Infrastructure Improvement Project. The title is admittedly a little vague, but it's a general CIP, so I think it's appropriate. Reason for that is we have these gray areas in town where we have a need to make improvements or replacements of infrastructure, and they don't fit into the traditional category or bucket. And oftentimes directors or staff are pointing fingers at each other saying, you need to fix this, you need to fix this, how are we going to pay for it? I've listed some examples in the description. Trout Brook Trail, eventually sections of the Trout Brook Trail will need to be repaved. Where does that come from? It's not a roadway, it's a sidewalk, it's a park. Some of our town parking lots fit into that category. Webster Walk area is an ongoing issue. If you've had the opportunity to walk there over the past few years, there is a retaining wall near the cinema. So not the library side, the other side. It's not going to allow sunlight. We've had issues where rain or snow melt will find its way behind the face or facade of the brick veneer on that retaining wall, and they're actually popping off the wall and falling down into a landscape area or the pedestrian pathway. So it's a safety concern. It's also a wonderful artistic treatment on the Webster Walk. There's paint and artwork there, some plaques, a sign. So it's unfortunately not looking as good as it really should be. But again, you run into that. Is it a sidewalk? Is it a building? So it fits into that gray area. And then lastly, the parking garages fits into that category, I believe, as well. Is it a parking facility? Is it a building? Who's ultimately responsible? And we don't have anything set up to answer these questions. The garages can be very expensive, well beyond the others that I've listed. So I requested an introduction of a new CIP to cover this gray area. The way that I hope it would work is each year the directors would provide requests to the town manager, and he or she at their discretion would decide how the funding should be spent. So this was introduced into year 2 as a recurring program at $200,000 each year. That concludes my presentation. I'll answer any questions that you have.
Does anyone have any questions? Well, I guess if no one has any questions, I guess you answered everybody's in your presentation. Thank you so much for coming today and giving us this overview of the budget. Especially for me, it was very helpful. I guess I wrote a thing for starting the meeting, not for ending the meeting. So I will call the meeting to an end at 8:53 a.m. And everyone have a nice day and don't get blown away outside today. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.